Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share if you find this content helpful. Welcome again, everybody. Today you will learn about the true third secret of Fatima, revealed, and we'll be discussing chapter 2. So during chapter 2, in this discussion, we'll talk about the mystery of Fatima, the circumstances of the mystery, the first two veils of the three secrets, the drafting of the secret. And once we are done with chapter 2, I will also highlight chapter 3. Please grab your notes, make notes, have questions, send them to us online. We'll be glad to respond as best as we can. All right, let's jump right into it. So right here you see in this picture the three children who encountered the lady from heaven at Fatima. These are Jacinta, Lucia in the middle, and Francisco. So in 1917 in Fatima, Portugal, the lady appeared to these three children a total of 6 times, from May 13th and on every 13th day of every month between May and October. The lady delivered several messages to humanity through these three children. 2 of these messages were revealed and they actually occurred. We'll get into that briefly, or rather soon. So, first time this happened, it was a calm, bright, and cloudless day. Suddenly, there was a powerful thunderclap which broke through the air and startled these three children. They were terrified. So the 3 shepherds hurried their herd of animals for refuge in a cave at the base of a nearby mountain. So this is what Lucia put together in a memoir several years later. So I'm going to read her words here in pink. We started going down the slope, pushing our herd in the direction of the road. Halfway through the slope, close to a big green oak that was there, we saw a light. After walking a few more steps, we saw pending on a small oak tree a lady dressed all in white, shining more than the sun, reflecting a pure and clear light so intense it looked like sun rays going through a crystal glass filled with crystalline water. We stopped, surprised by this apparition. We were so close within the light that was surrounding her, or rather that emanated from her, maybe within 1.5 meters of her. Then the mysterious lady introduced herself to Lucia and her cousins as coming from heaven. The lady said she was coming from heaven. She told them to meet her at the same spot on the 13th of each month, at the same time at noon, when she would reveal matters of extreme importance to them about the world. So this is what happened on May 13th, 1917, according to Lucia's own account. Now, in several months of documenting the history of these strange events, testimonies poured in from everywhere. It seemed that at each apparition, each of the 6 times, the lady from heaven signaled her presence with some kind of visible phenomena. Every time there was some visible phenomena. Let's go on. Now, on the left here is what Fatima, Portugal looks like today. On the right is the image we looked at that was actually taken in 1917, in October 13th, 1917, when the sun did some supernatural things that looked like it was falling, looked like it was dancing, and so on. What I'd like us to know is that the circumstances of this mystery are very similar to other supernatural phenomenon when the Most High came to earth in the form of his son, who we call Messiah, or some people call Jesus Christ, the Messiah. So some of those circumstances include that the words of God, which are spoken to some degree in our languages, they become rendered, they become real in actual events. So we might read of something in the scriptures, like we read, or it's written in Isaiah, that, Isaiah would come and the government would rest upon his shoulders. And then he actually was born in Bethlehem. And just like Fatima here, just like Bethlehem was an insignificant town. In fact, there's somebody in the scriptures who said, can anything come out of Nazareth or Bethlehem? Just like Bethlehem, Fatima, this town of Fatima, was an insignificant village. Its population was about 2,500 people. So think of your small towns or villages where there are not many people, 2,500 people. And the same thing happened in Bethlehem. It was insignificant. But on May 13th, it would serve as a theater of supernatural events. Supernatural events which would be known to the entire world. What happened? These three shepherds, I'm repeating the word shepherds because there were also shepherds when Isaiah was born over 2,000 years ago. These three were shepherds: Lucia, who was 10 years old, Francisco, who was 9, and Jacinta, who was 7. They were herding their sheep in a valley. This wide valley is surrounded by mountains. Okay, around here, there are mountains and green oaks and olive trees. The topology or the landscape of the place makes it a natural amphitheater, as though it was designed as a stage for these extraordinary events that the shepherds would witness. It was actually about 2 miles from the first home closest to this location. And just like Apostle John, we received a message, or rather, Apostle John received a visit when he was in the island of Patmos. He received a visit from a messenger of the Most High. You can read about it in John chapter 1. So did these three shepherds. They received a messenger of the Most High, which was the lady. So very simple circumstances, just like in the birth of Christ, where angels showed up, where there were shepherds. The Most High was sending his messengers to the simple, the lowly, the poor. Children. He didn't come looking for people who are adults, who were, educated and sophisticated. No, he used simple people, simple children. Okay, now let's talk about the first two veils of the three secrets. So I have an image here of those three children. Remember, these three children were given several messages, but each of them was responsible for certain messages. That is why they talk about the three secrets, because these children would see the lady. Some people would not see the lady. They were the ones seeing her. They were the ones hearing her. That's why it's known that they had three secrets, because there were three of them. So it was on the 13th of July. Remember, this apparition started in May. So May, June, July, the third month, third appearance. It was on the 13th of July that the mystery of the three secrets of Fatima really started. On this date, the lady from heaven transmitted to the children the messages destined to shake the world. Okay? So, what were these messages? Now, later on, that was in 1917. Later on in 1942, the public read the publication of the first part of the memoirs of Lucia dos Santos. The first two veils of the three secrets of Fatima were unveiled, or they fell. Why is it that Lucia dos Santos is giving this information in 1942 because these other two children died in 1918, the following year, and 1919, respectively. Please go ahead and mute yourselves in case your microphone is on. So what happened was that the two children who died in 1918 and 1919 had not yet conveyed to the rest of the world their messages or their secrets. But then in 1942, the only surviving elder cousin, who is Lucia in the middle, she published her first part of the memoirs. And in that publication, she talked about this information: the end of the First World War, the Russian Revolution, a vision of hell, and the Second World War, which the lady had said would be signaled ahead of time by a night illuminated by an unknown source of light. You can read more about that unknown source of light. It's the aurora borealis, which occurred in 1938. So these four items, or messages that I summarized as 4 bullet points from the book, were part of the other two children's secrets. So when they were published in 1942, that's when the world realized that these things had actually happened, especially the end of the First World War, the Russian Revolution. They had also been given a vision of hell, not yet happened, but maybe it has happened to those who are in hell by then. And then the Second World War, because it's 1942, the war started in 1939. So when people saw this, they understood that, and they believed that whatever revelations were given to these three children were true. And therefore, people wanted to know what was the third secret, which Lucia in the middle held. Now, let me show you. This is a sign. This is a picture from the book, shows the aurora borealis, which is lights coming up in the sky that happened in 1938. This is just taken from one location. This was happening across the world. I mean, people in Morocco saw it, people in Europe in different places saw it, people in North America saw it, and it was like something like never seen before. So that was a confirmation of this fourth message here, that this is a signal. We're going to go into the Second World War. So this had happened. People had experienced these things. And when this publication was given, they knew that the secrets that had been given were true. They were happening. So they wanted to know, what is the third secret? And the third secret had not yet been revealed. And it had been mentioned by the lady that Lucia was supposed to deliver this message and it would be transmitted to the world in 1960. Okay. Now, let me, so all of these events related to Fatima and the sun dancing in 1917. That is why many people around the world were not satisfied when in 2000, May 13th, 2000, the Vatican did or apparently disclosed the third secret. People say, why did you disclose it in 2000? You were supposed to have disclosed it in 1960. And what they disclosed was not satisfactory. We'll get into that later on in the discussion. Let me go to the next slide here. Okay, so let's talk about this secret and how it was drafted. So it fell on Lucia, the older lady or the older girl, to carry this secret. Remember, the secret was to be transmitted to the Vatican and to be disclosed in 1960. That's what the lady who appeared in the skies had told Lucia. So in 1943, just a year after her publication, Sister Lucia was very sick. She nearly died. And a certain bishop in Portugal, his name was Da Silva, he was troubled because he was worried that if she dies and she's not given the world the secret, we'll be left in peril as humanity and won't know whatever the message is. So he urged her to write down and transmit or send a message of what this secret was. So in September of 1943, this bishop suggested to Lucia to write down the text of the third secret. And finally, after quite some back and forth, Sister Lucia gathered enough strength to write the text of the third secret. Now, Sister Lucia, attributed her inability to write the secret before to some supernatural power. We can get into that later on. Okay? But look at what happened. Bishop da Silva proposed to send the envelope to the Vatican. Pope Pius XII refused to accept it. And then he was conspicuously silent. He didn't want to explain why he didn't want to receive it. Okay? So this Portuguese diocese remained with the burden of what to do with it. And this diocese, where Bishop da Silva was, had promised that they would reveal to the world this secret in 1960, as Lucia had said the lady required. Then in May of 1955, I'm going to skip some of these details, but in May of 1955, the Vatican reversed its refusal. So they accepted the letter and they told the bishop, go ahead and send it to Rome through some other entity. So they did that. And then Sister Lucia explained to a cardinal, this is a cardinal in Rome, from Rome, and later to another guy, an expert on the Fatima phenomenon, that the lady said that the secret should be disclosed in 1960 because world events which had unfolded by then will make the message clear for all. So think about in history what happened between this time, between 1942 when she had published her memoir, first part of her memoir, and 1960. And why was the lady insisting that this should be disclosed in 1960? Okay, by the spring of 1957, the Vatican finally had the third secret in their possession. So it was sent and they got it by 1957. And now the world knew in 3 years' time, you're going to tell us what's going on. Did they tell? Well, let's find out. February 8, 1960, the world received this news through the Portuguese press agency. An identified Vatican source declared without further notice that the third secret will not be announced this year and will probably remain forever sealed and concealed. So they said, no, we're not going to tell you. That came from the Vatican, from a source of the Vatican. John Paul the 23rd, or John the 23rd, was the Pope who refused the honor of making public the third secret of Fatima in 1960. And the author, Pastor Mello, says that this reveals who the Antichrist is, the institution of the Roman Catholic Church. That is the Pope who was in office at that time, who made the decision not to reveal that. So why did this Pope decide against revealing? I think the answer lies in the nature of the message that caused this Pope to collapse to the floor in despair when he read or when he was given the message in the third secret. We'll come to that. Now, let me go through chapter 3 and talk about some of the things highlighted in this chapter in the book. This chapter goes into detail about what is called the big lie of racial supremacy. That certain races are more superior than others. Specifically, what we call the white race is more superior than other races. This is the big part of the big lie. And this lie has been advanced for hundreds of years, for thousands of years, through religious institutions as well as educational institutions. And we'll see some examples. We'll also see the examples of how that lie has been discreetly communicated, but not intentionally communicated, through the identification of what they call the Black Mary, Mary, Mother of Jesus, or Yesiah, who they call the Black Madonna. And then we'll see some evidence that the Bible is actually a story about Africans, Africa, and the people of Africa and their spirituality. Okay, give you some quick examples here in images. So, through religious and educational institutions, how has this lie been propagated? This is an image of the Great Sphinx in Egypt. And you can notice the nose has been blown off. This nose was being blown off by Napoleon, the European general. Why was he blowing the nose off? They also blew some of them on the lips because they were hiding the identity of the black people, the black pharaohs who built this great civilization. Why do I mention this? Because this is what we are taught in our educational institutions. We'll be taught that the people in Egypt were white instead of being taught that they were black. And they try to destroy the evidence that proves that they were black. Some of you have watched the movie about the Ten Commandments. This is the actor known as, I believe, is Charlton Heston or something like that. And he's portrayed as a white person and he's representing Moses. Moses was in Egypt. The scriptures tell us that Moses was even confused as an Egyptian by Jethro. Jethro's daughter said, that Egyptian guy helped us. Moses should have looked something like this, not this. So when people propagate movies, books, whatever publications, and they're communicating, showing that Moses and other characters in the scriptures are white, this is part of the lie. They're taking credit. They're stealing our legacy. This lady is called Hottentot Venus. She is South African. She was captured by a Dutch person living in South Africa around 1820. And then she was actually kidnapped and then taken to Europe and was being displayed in Europe as if she is some animal to be displayed in a zoo or for public viewing. And they would display her naked. She only survived 5 years, and then she died. Why are they displaying a human being in Europe together or putting a human being on display? This is Ota Benga, a Congolese pygmy or Congolese person from Isolele, who they brought to New York and were displaying him in the zoo together with other animals. Why would they do that in Europe and in America? They're propagating the idea that these black people are inferior. We all know about Darwin's evolution theory, that we've probably learnt about in our schools. They say that humanity evolved. This theory proposes, it's a theory by the way, proposes that humanity evolved from apes into modern white-looking or Caucasian-looking human beings, meaning that the darker, older apes or animals were more primitive and these ones were more modern. This is how the institutions, education and religious, were used to propagate this lie and steal our history. Here are pictures of the Black Mary or Madonna. These are many pictures and images scattered all over Europe. This one that you see here is, and I'm sorry, this one that you see here in the middle, according to this book, it says that this was drawn by Luke. Luke, the one who was moving around during the times of Paul. He was moving around with Paul, the physician. He originally created this painting on a piece of wood, and it surfaced again in the 4th century after disappearing for about 400 years. Here in the middle is Pope John Paul II. He's also here in this image. You can see him praying to an image of a Black Mary and a Black Jesus. That is what they call the Black Madonna. Every time he visited his home country, Poland, he would do this publicly where he could be seen. As a pope, if he knew the truth that Josiah was black, he should have been communicating that publicly, not trying to do it in a subtle manner like this. So this is supporting the fact that the Vatican and other religious institutions that portray white imagery of the disciples do so knowingly. Because why would the Pope be bowing down and even praying towards an image, first of all, and secondly, a black image? Yet, lots of buildings, lot of places are littered with white iconography of a white Jesus. Why are they lying? Last but not least, let's talk about the way the Bible is African. I'll just give you a few examples. There's tons of them. We've covered that in many slides. So there's an African saint called Maurice. Maurice means black. Here's a depiction of him. You never hear about these things, okay? A few years after Maurice's death, his portrait was bleached to white. And the meaning of Maurice, the Moor, the black, fell into the limbo of history. Why would they change and whitewash literally his image? Another example is an African pope who headed the church during the conversion to Christianity of Emperor Constantine in 313 AD. Miltiades, that's his name, was the 32nd pope after the Apostle Peter, according to the Vatican Chronicles. He was also posthumously, after he died, bleached white. We all know the story in the Bible. Isolele, as a nation, was born in Egypt. I've said it many times. Jacob and his children went into Egypt with the extended family. There were about 72 people. They were a family, an extended family. But when those people left Egypt during the Exodus, they were a nation that was born in Egypt and that had over 600,000 men, without counting the women and children. We know the story in the Exodus that they are declared a nation by the Most High at Mount Sinai. The Bible is about African people, their African spirituality. Now let's get into some discussion. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share if you find this content helpful.